Good day everyone. I am Ryan Sahonya and I will be discuss to you some topics in our subject Industrial Security Management.
So today, I will be discuss to you about the types of hazard, probability, and risk matrix. So first, we will now be dealing about the types of hazard. In the types of hazard, there are 7 types of hazard. So first is the natural hazard. So the natural hazard is these are hazard which arise from natural phenomena. So the examples here is flood caused by typhoons, earthquakes, and fire, but not caused by human action. Second is human or man-made hazard. This hazard which are a result of a state of mind, attitude, weaknesses, or character traits of one or more persons. They can be acts of commission or omission, both overt and covert, which can disrupt operations of a plant or installation. So the examples here is the carelessness, accidents, and dissatisfaction. Next, disloyalty, subversion, and sabotage. Third, espionage, pilferage, and theft. And last, vandalism. Third is the biological hazard. It is the substance that poses a threat to the health of living organism, primarily humans. This could include a sample of a microorganism, virus, or toxin that can adversely affect human health. So the examples here is the bacteria, viruses, insect bites, animal and bird droppings. Excuse me. Fourth is the chemical hazard. It is the type of occupational hazard caused by exposure to chemicals in the workplace. Exposure to chemicals in the workplace can cause acute or long-term detrimental health effects. So the examples here is liquids like cleaning products, vapors and fumes, and gases like acetylene, and flammable materials like gasoline. Fifth is the ergonomic hazard. It is physical condition that may pose risk of injury to the musculoskeletal system, such as the muscles of ligaments of the lower back, tendons or nerves of the hands or wrists, or bones surrounding the knees, resulting in a musculoskeletal disorder. Example, improper setup of workstation, poor design of equipment or workstation design, and repetitive movement. Next is the physical hazard. It is an agent, factor, or circumstances that can cause harm without contact. They can be classified as type of occupational hazard or environmental hazard. So in this type of hazard, there are 4 examples like slippery floors, objects in walkways, unsafe or misused machinery, and poor lighting. Last is the psychological hazard. It is the work stressor in any occupational hazard that affects the psychological and physical well-being of workers, including their ability to participate in a work environment among other people. Example, shift of work, workload, dealing with the public, harassment, discrimination, and threat of danger. So that is the types of hazard. So now, let's now be dealing about the probability and risk matrix. So probability, it is the chance or likelihood that a loss will take place, indicated by a mathematical statement concerning the point possibility of an event occurring, or the chance that something will happen, how likely it is that some event will occur. So probability, how it works or used in our daily life. So if you use probability in daily life to make decisions when you don't know for sure what the outcome will be, most of the time you won't perform actual probability problems, but you'll use subjective probability to make judgment calls and determine the best course of action. So I've mentioned about the subjective probability. So the meaning of subjective probability is it is the type of probability derived from an individual's personal judgment or own experience about whether a specific outcome is likely to occur. It contains no formal calculations and only reflects the subject's opinions and past experience. An example of subjective probability is gut instinct. So let's search about the gut instinct in my computer room. So gut instinct meaning it is an instinctive feeling as an opposite to an opinion or idea based on facts. So it is used talking about something we don't really think of. We are more likely to just feel it, probably even without any explanation. So that is the meaning of probability. So next, let's be discuss about the risk matrix. So before we discuss the risk matrix, I will define first what is risk. So risk, it is the process of detecting hazard and assessing associated risk or an expression of possible loss in terms of probability and severity. Now, let's be deal about the risk matrix. Have you ever gone on some sort of adventure? Maybe you went ziplining or jumped out of an airplane. Whatever exciting thrill you choose, did you think about the risk first? What were the chances that you would be hurt or worse? While adventures do carry risks, they are not the only place we weigh potential outcomes. So in this lesson, we will learn about a risk matrix, which is a graphical depiction of the severity and likelihood of an event. For more understanding of risk matrix, I prepared some example video. Let's watch.
Say you have to cross a road and you're trying to figure out what the risk associated with this is. Let's take a look at some different scenarios. In the first scenario, our hazard is a bicycle. Let's assume there are only bicycles allowed on this road. Let's also assume that the road is not that busy and there's only one bicycle every 5 minutes on that road. Now, because bicycles don't go on that road very often, the likelihood of the bicycle crashing into you is low, right? If the bicycle does crash into you, the consequence of that would be relatively low, wouldn't it? So in this scenario, the likelihood and the consequence are both low. Therefore, the overall risk is low. Now, obviously, if there are bicycles traveling more frequently, the likelihood of a crash would be higher. But the consequence, if a bicycle did crash into you, would still be low. But what if things were different? Let's change that bicycle to a truck. Now, with a truck passing every 5 minutes, the likelihood of a crash would still be low. However, the consequence is far more severe. Now, imagine if it was a busy truck route and trucks were going on this road very frequently. In this scenario, both the likelihood of a crash and the consequence will be high, which means that the overall risk would be high. You wouldn't even consider crossing this road, right? A simple way of visualizing this and figuring out the overall level of risk is by using a risk matrix. In a risk matrix, information about consequence and likelihood can be used to determine the overall level of risk. Let's have a look at a simple risk matrix. A risk matrix is basically a table or grid with a measure of likelihood on one side and consequence on the other, graded from low to high. The combination of the two, which is the overall level of risk, can be categorized as low, medium, or high, and color-coded. So let's get back to our example. In the scenario in which there are bikes traveling very infrequently, the likelihood is low and the consequence is low. Therefore, the overall risk is low. When there are more bikes, the likelihood is high, but the consequence is still low, and therefore the overall risk is medium. Let's consider the truck now. In the scenario where trucks are infrequent, the likelihood of a crash is low, but the consequence is high. The overall risk is medium. And if it's a busy truck route, the likelihood and consequence are both high, and therefore the overall risk is high. So that's how a risk matrix can be used to determine the overall level of risk using an assessment of likelihood and consequence.
So that's all. Thank you for watching. God bless.